The ground split open like a wound, and fire poured out. Danny Reyes felt the shockwave hit him before he heard the explosion. He was 200 meters underground, welding a cracked support beam in the maintenance tunnels of Mining Colony Bravo 7. The metal beneath his boots shuddered. His welding torch flickered. Then the alarms began to scream that he grabbed his gear and ran toward the surface lift. Other workers passed him going the same direction, their faces pale with fear. Nobody spoke. They all knew what volcanic activity meant on a moon like this one. It meant death if you stayed still. Danny reached the surface level and stopped. The eastern section of the colony was burning. Not just burning, it was melting. A fissure had opened directly beneath the habitation block where the visiting Scytheran diplomats were staying. Rivers of molten rock cut across the walkways. Support structures groaned and buckled in the heat. The colony administrator's voice crackled over the emergency speakers. All personnel evacuate to western bunkers immediately. Eastern block is compromised. Repeat, Eastern block is lost. Rescue teams cannot reach survivors. Thermal readings exceed safe parameters. Danny watched colonists streaming past him towards safety. He should follow them. He knew that. His contract said nothing about dying for strangers. His daughter back on Earth needed him alive. Then he saw her dot a small figure on a crumbling walkway across the fissure. Silver scales caught the firelight. A young Scytheran female, maybe the equivalent of a human teenager. She was screaming something in a language Danny did not understand. Her arms wrapped around a metal railing that was already starting to glow red from the heat. The walkway beneath her cracked. Danny did not remember making a decision. One moment he was standing with the other evacuees. The next moment he was running toward the fire while everyone else ran away. His welding suit was designed for close volcanic work. Heavy duty, heat resistant. It would not save him from direct contact with lava, but it would buy him time in conditions that would kill an unprotected human in seconds. He pulled his helmet on and sealed it. The temperature readout climbed immediately. 40 degrees. 50. 60. The fissure was 3 meters wide where he reached it. Molten rock glowed orange at the bottom. Danny backed up, took a breath, and jumped. He landed hard on the other side. The metal screamed under his weight, but held. He kept moving. The walkway swayed with every step. Smoke filled his vision. The heat pressed against him like a physical force. The Scytheran girl saw him coming. She stopped screaming. Her violet eyes went wide as she watched this human walk through fire toward her. On her world, nobody walked through fire. Fire meant death. Fire meant retreat. Fire meant you left the weak behind and saved yourself. Danny reached her and knelt down. He made himself small, less threatening. He extended his hand toward her. She flinched back. Fear and confusion mixed on her face. She did not know this creature. She did not know why he was here. She did not understand why anyone would come for her when a logical choice was to let her die. Danny kept his hand extended. He spoke softly, knowing she probably could not understand his words, but hoping she would understand his tone. It is okay. I am here to help. I am not going to leave you. We're going to get out of this together. The walkway lurched. A section behind Danny collapsed into the fissure with a roar of sparks and flame. They had maybe 5 minutes before this whole platform followed it down. The girl looked at Danny's hand. She looked at the fire behind him. She looked at the impossible distance between them and safety. Then she took his hand. Her scales were cool against his glove. Danny helped her stand. She was smaller than he expected. Lighter. Her silver scales had lost some of their shine, and he realized with a jolt of concern that her species could not handle heat like humans could. She was already suffering from thermal shock. Danny unclipped his outer welding cloak and wrapped it around her. The heat-resistant fabric would help. He hoped it would be enough. The main exit was gone, collapsed into the fissure. Danny scanned their surroundings through the smoke and spotted an old maintenance shaft access point near the far wall. It would lead down into the cooling systems. Dangerous, but passable. Better than staying here and burning. He pointed toward the shaft and gestured for her to follow. She nodded. She understood. They moved together through the burning section. Danny kept his body between her and the worst of the flames. Twice he had to carry her over gaps where the floor had given way. She clung to him without protest, her arms tight around his neck, her face pressed against his shoulder to escape the smoke. They reached the maintenance shaft. Danny pried the access panel open with his bare hands. The metal seared through his gloves, but he did not stop. He helped the girl inside first, then followed her into the darkness below. Behind them, the walkway finally collapsed. The sound of it falling into the fissure echoed through the shaft like thunder. They were safe. For now. Danny looked at the young Scytherin huddled beside him in the darkness. She was shaking. Her violet eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. She said something in her language. A single word. He did not know what it meant, but her tone was clear. "Thank you." Danny nodded. He pointed down the shaft toward the distant promise of cooler air and safety. They still had a long way to go. He did not know her name. He did not know why she was here. He did not know that this scared silver scale girl was third in line for the most powerful throne in the Scytherin sovereignty. He only knew that she needed help, and he could give it. That was enough. Darkness wrapped around them like a blanket, broken only by the faint glow of emergency lights along the shaft walls. Danny helped the young Scytherin down the maintenance ladder. Her hands trembled on the rungs. The heat-resistant cloak he had given her hung loose around her small frame, making her look even younger than she probably was. Every few meters, she stopped to catch her breath. Her species was not built for this kind of stress. They reached the bottom of the shaft and entered a long corridor. The temperature here was cooler. Not comfortable, but survivable. Danny checked the girl's condition. Her silver scales had regained some of their shine. That was good. She was recovering. He tapped his chest and spoke slowly. "Danny, my name is Danny." She watched his mouth form the words. Then she pointed to herself. "Lira, Danny nodded. Okay, Lira, we need to keep moving. Can you walk?" She did not understand all his words, but she understood enough. She straightened up and nodded. Determination replaced the fear in her violet eyes. Whatever else this girl was, she was not a quitter. They moved through the corridor together. Danny kept his welding torch ready, using its light to guide them through the darkness. The maintenance tunnels beneath the colony were a maze of pipes and wires and forgotten equipment. He had worked down here for 3 years. He knew the layout better than most. After 20 minutes, they heard voices ahead. Danny signaled for Lyra to stay back. He crept forward and peered around a corner. 2 figures huddled in an alcove. One was an elderly Scytherin male, his scales dull and gray with age. The other was a younger Scytherin, maybe in his 20s by human standards, trying to drag the old one towards safety. The younger one saw Danny and froze. Fear crossed his face. Then he stepped in front of the elderly male, positioning himself as a shield. Danny held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I am here to help. Is he hurt?" The young Scytherin studied Danny for a long moment. Then he spoke in broken but understandable Terran common. "His leg. Broken. Cannot walk. Cannot carry him far. Too heavy." Danny moved closer and knelt beside the elderly Scytherin. The old male watched him with sharp, intelligent eyes. There was no fear in that gaze, only assessment, calculation. This was someone used to judging others. Danny examined the injured leg. A bad break, but not life-threatening if they could get him a medical care soon. He looked at the young Scytherin. "What is your name?" "Kess." The young one gestured to the elder. "Counselor Veth." Danny nodded. "Help me get him on my back. I will carry him." Kess stared at Danny as if he had spoken nonsense. "You cannot carry him. He is too heavy. The heat will slow you down. You will die." Danny met his gaze steadily. "Then I will die trying. Now help me lift him." Something changed in Kess's expression. He looked at Danny the way someone might look at a puzzle they could not solve. Then he moved to help. They lifted Counselor Veth onto Danny's back. The old Scytherin was heavy, but Danny had spent years doing hard labor in low gravity. He could manage. He adjusted his grip and started walking. Lyra appeared from where she had been hiding. She saw the 2 new Scytherins and her eyes went wide. She said something rapid in their language. Counselor Veth responded, his voice weak but firm. Kess bowed his head slightly to her. Danny noticed the bow. Strange. He filed it away and kept moving. They traveled through the tunnels for another hour. Danny's shoulders burned. His legs ached. The temperature rose and fell as they passed through different sections of the underground system. Twice they had to backtrack when corridors became impassable. During a rest break, Lyra sat beside Danny. She had been watching him the whole time, studying him. Now she spoke carefully, choosing her words in Terran common. "Why did you come?" "For me." Danny wiped sweat from his forehead. "Because you were in trouble." She frowned. "That is not a reason. I am stranger. You do not know me. You could die." Danny thought about her question. He thought about his wife, dead in a house fire 5 years ago because he could not reach her in time. He thought about his daughter, sleeping safely on Earth, unaware that her father was carrying strangers through burning tunnels on a moon 1,000 light years away. "Back home," he said slowly, "I was a firefighter." "Do you know what that is?" Lyra shook her head. "When buildings catch fire, firefighters go inside. We find people who are trapped. We carry them out." He paused. "My wife died in a fire. I cannot save her. After that, I promised myself I would never let anyone burn alone again." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his hand. Her cool scales pressed against his burned skin. "You are strange," she said. "Your people are strange." Danny almost smiled. "Yeah, we get that a lot." Counselor Veth spoke from where Kess was helping him rest. His voice was thoughtful. He was watching Danny with new interest. "Among my people, the strong survive. The weak are left behind. It is the natural order. Your kind does not follow this order." Danny shrugged. "Maybe that is why we are still around. We look after each other. Even the weak ones. Even to strangers." The old counselor said nothing. But something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like respect. Danny stood and stretched his aching muscles. "We need to keep moving. There is a junction up ahead. One path leads to the bunkers. The other leads to the communication array." His radio crackled suddenly. A weak signal broke through the static. A voice speaking Scythron. Desperate. Pleading. Lyra's face went pale. "Children," she whispered. "They're saying there are children trapped near the array." Danny looked at the junction ahead. Safety was one direction. More people who needed help or the other. T was not really a choice at all. "Let us go," he said. "We have more work to do." The communication array stood at the edge of the colony like a metal forest reaching toward the sky. Danny led his small group through the burning corridors that connected the main complex to the array building. The heat had grown worse again. Smoke hung thick in the air. Every breath felt like swallowing hot sand. He had sent 2 human colonists they found along the way to guide Counselor Veth toward the western bunkers. The old Scythron had protested, but Danny had been firm. "You cannot help us where we are going. Get to safety. We will bring the children." Now it was just Danny, Lyra, and Kess pushing forward through the flames. Lyra moved differently since they left the counselor behind. Her posture had changed. Her voice carried more weight when she spoke. Danny noticed it, but did not understand it. He assumed she was finding her courage. Young people often did in crisis. They reached the array building and forced open a jammed door. Inside, the emergency lights cast everything in a red glow. The main chamber was still intact, but fire was spreading from the lower levels. They had maybe 15 minutes before the whole structure became an oven. Danny heard crying. "Children, close by." "This way," he said, and ran toward the sound. They found them in a storage room near the back of the building. 5 Scythrons huddled together. 3 were children, small and frightened, their scales pale with terror. 2 were adults in military-style uniforms. Guards, Danny realized. Professional soldiers. The guard saw Danny first and raised weapons. He stopped immediately, hands up. "I am here to help. I am with survivors from the habitation block." The guards did not lower their weapons. One of them barked a question in Scythron. Danny did not understand the words, but the tone was clear. Suspicion, fear, distrust. Then Lyra stepped forward. She moved past Danny without hesitation. She spoke a single sentence in her language. Her voice was different now. Commanding. Absolute. The voice of someone who expected to be obeyed without question. Both guards dropped to one knee. They bowed their heads. One of them spoke rapidly, relief flooding his voice. The other actually trembled. Danny stared at the scene. Something cold settled in his stomach. He looked at Kess, who had also bowed his head. He looked at Lyra, who stood straight and tall despite the smoke and heat. "Lyra, what is happening?" She turned to face him. For a moment, she looked like the scared girl he had carried through the fire. Then her expression hardened into something older, something that had been trained into her since birth. Later, she said, "We save the children first." Questions later, Danny wanted to argue. He wanted answers. But she was right. The building was burning. The children were crying. Everything else could wait. That he moved to the children and knelt before them. "Hey, it is okay. I know I look strange, but I'm going to get you out of here. Can you trust me?" The children stared at him with wide eyes. One of them, a tiny girl with scales, so pale they looked almost white, reached out and touched his face. Her small fingers traced his features. Alien, different, terrifying to her, probably. Then she wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight. Danny lifted her easily. He looked at the guards. "You too. Take the other children. Kess, stay with Lyra. We move fast. We do not stop." "Understood." The guards hesitated. They looked at Lyra. She nodded once. They obeyed. The group moved through the burning building toward the exit. Danny led the way, one arm holding the small Scytheran girl, the other clearing debris from their path. The heat was brutal now. His welding suit was reaching its limits. He could feel blisters forming on his arms. They reached a corridor where part of the ceiling had collapsed. A gap remained, just wide enough to squeeze through. Danny helped the others through first. The guards. The children. Kess. Finally, Lyra, as Danny started to follow, he heard a groan above him. He looked up and saw a support beam breaking loose. It was falling directly toward Lyra that he did not think. He lunged forward and shoved her out of the way. The beam caught him across the shoulder. The impact drove him to his knees. He heard something crack. Pain exploded through his body. Lyra screamed his name. The guards rushed forward and dragged the beam off him. Danny forced himself to stand. His left arm hung wrong. Dislocated shoulder. Maybe broken collarbone. He did not have time to care. "Keep moving," he gasped. "Do not stop." They reached the exit and stumbled out into the open air. The sky was dark with smoke. In the distance, Danny could see the western bunkers. Safety. So close now that he kept walking. One step. Another. The pain in his shoulder was a distant thing now. All that mattered was reaching safety. All that mattered was getting these people out alive. Lyra walked beside him. She had not left his side since the beam fell. Her eyes kept moving to his injured arm. "You are hurt badly," she said. "I have had worse." "You are lying." Danny almost laughed. "Yeah, I am lying." They were 100 meters from the bunkers when rescue ships appeared in the sky. Scytheran military vessels, sleek and silver, descended through the smoke like angels of salvation. They landed between the survivors and the bunkers. Soldiers poured out. Danny stopped walking. He looked at the ships. He looked at the soldiers. He looked at the way they immediately formed a protective circle around Lyra. Kess appeared at his side. "Now you understand?" Danny watched Lyra speak to the soldiers. They hung on her every word. When she pointed toward him, they all turned to stare. "Who is she?" Danny asked quietly. Kess's voice was soft. "She is Lyra then Ve Cythera, third princess of the sovereignty, heir to the frozen throne after her brothers." Danny closed his eyes. He thought about the scared girl he had found on a burning walkway. The one who held his hand through the darkness. The one who asked him why he saved strangers, that a princess. He had carried a princess through fire like she was just another person who needed help. Because she was just another person who needed help. That had to be enough. That was always enough. The Scytheran soldiers surrounded Danny like wolves circling prey. He stood alone near the bunker entrance while medics rushed to treat the rescued children. His shoulder screamed with every breath. His welding suit was torn and blackened. Burns covered his arms where the protective fabric had failed. None of that mattered to the soldiers. They saw only one thing. A deathworlder. A human from a planet of fire and blood and endless violence. And their princess had been alone with him for hours. One soldier stepped forward. He was tall for a Scytheran, his silver scales edged with blue markings that Danny guessed meant rank. He spoke in accented Terran common. "Human, you will explain why the princess was in your company." Danny met his gaze without flinching. Because she was trapped in a burning building. Because I got her out. You expect us to believe this? The soldier's hand rested on his weapon. You expect us to believe a deathworlder risked his life for a stranger? Danny was too tired to argue. He was too tired to explain. He had spent the last 3 hours walking through fire, carrying people on his back, watching buildings collapse around him. He did not have the energy to defend himself. Then Lyra's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Captain, stand down. The soldiers turned. Lyra walked toward them. She had been cleaned up slightly. Someone had found her better clothes. But Danny could still see the fear and exhaustion behind her royal composure. She was still the scared girl from the walkway. She was just hiding it better now. The captain bowed his head. Your Highness, we were only ensuring your safety. Why safety was ensured hours ago. By him. Lyra pointed at Danny. This human walked through fire that would have killed any of you. He carried our elders on his back. He saved our children. He asked nothing in return. The captain hesitated. He looked at Danny with confusion. Your Highness, he is a deathworlder. They cannot be trusted. Their kind lives for violence. Lyra's voice went cold. I'm telling you what I saw. I'm telling you what he did. Will you call your princess a liar? The captain paled. He bowed deeply. No, Your Highness. I would never. Lyra turned to Danny. Her expression softened. Coolme, you need medical attention. Danny let her lead him away from the soldiers. He was too tired to protest, too tired to do anything but put one foot in front of the other. The medical tent was crowded with survivors. Humans and Scytherans lay side by side on cots. Doctors and nurses moved between them without regard for species. In crisis, they were all just people who needed help. That a Scytheran medic examined Danny's shoulder and made a clicking sound of concern. This is bad. You should not be standing. That I have had worse, Danny said. It was becoming a reflex. The medic gave him a look that said she did not believe him. She started working on his injuries. Danny closed his eyes and let the exhaustion wash over him. He heard footsteps approach. When he opened his eyes, Counselor Veth was standing beside his cot. The old Scytheran looked better now. Someone had set his broken leg properly. He leaned on a cane, but stood straight with dignity. Danny Reyes, Counselor Veth said. I have questions for you. Danny sighed. Everyone has questions for me today. The counselor sat on a chair beside the cot. His sharp eyes studied Danny's face. When you found me in the tunnels, you chose to carry me. An old stranger. Dead weight. A burden that slowed you down and increased your risk. Yeah. Why? Danny stared at the ceiling. Because you needed help. That is not an answer. That is an evasion. IT is the only answer I have. Counselor Veth was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke slowly. Among my people, the strong prosper. The weak are left behind. This is not cruelty. This is survival. Resources are limited. Compassion is a luxury that gets people killed. Danny turned his head to look at the old Scytheran. And among my people, we carry each other. The strong carry the weak. The fast wait for the slow. We reach the finish line together, or not at all. That is strange philosophy. Maybe, but it is why we are still here. Counselor Veth leaned back in his chair. I have served the sovereignty for 60 years. I have advised 3 generations of rulers. I thought I understood the galaxy. He paused. I did not understand humans. We are not that complicated. You're the most complicated species I have ever encountered. The counselor's voice held something like wonder. You walk through fire for strangers. You carry the burdens of others without being asked. You treat a princess and a beggar with the same hands. His eyes met Danny's. Either your kind is the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced, or you are its greatest hope. I cannot decide which. Danny did not know how to respond to that. He was just a welder, a former firefighter, a father who missed his daughter. He was not a hero. He was not a symbol. He was just a man who could not watch people burn. Lyra appeared at the tent entrance. Her eyes found Danny immediately. She walked over and stood beside Counselor Veth. The rescue ships are almost loaded, she said. We will be leaving soon. Danny nodded. Good. You should get somewhere safe. Lyra hesitated. She looked at Counselor Veth. The old Scytheran gave a slight nod and stood, moving away to give them privacy. Danny. Lyra's voice was soft. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Would you have done the same for anyone? If it had been someone else trapped on that walkway, someone who was not me, would you have run through fire for them? Danny thought about the question. He thought about his wife, his daughter, all the people he could not save, and all the people he had saved. Yeah, he said finally. I would have. Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Her violet eyes searched his face for something. Deception, maybe. Self-interest. The hidden agenda that she had been trained to expect from everyone. She found nothing. You really mean that? She said quietly that I really do. Lyra reached out and took his hand. Her cool scales pressed against his burned skin. Then I need you to do something for me, she said. Something important. Something that might change everything. Danny looked at the princess who had been a stranger just hours ago. What do you need? 6 months later, Danny stood in a palace made of ice. The walls rose around him like frozen waves, catching light and throwing it back in 1,000 different colors. The floor beneath his boots was polished until it gleamed like a mirror. Everywhere he looked, he saw beauty that had taken centuries to create. He had never felt more out of place in his life. A Scythian servant walked beside him, explaining the protocol for the 100th time. When you approach the frozen throne, you must bow exactly 3 times. The first bow acknowledges the sovereignty. The second bow honors the ancestors. The third bow shows respect to the emperor himself. Danny nodded along, without really listening. He was wearing clothes that cost more than his entire mining contract. His hair had been combed and styled by professionals. Someone had even tried to teach him how to walk with dignity, whatever that meant, that he was here because Lyra had asked him to come 3 months after the colony evacuation. Her message had arrived at his apartment on Earth. A formal invitation to address the Sovereignty Council. She explained that factions within her government were debating humanity's future. Some wanted humans classified as dangerous primitives. Others wanted to use them as soldiers in distant wars. Neither option was good. Lyra had a different idea. She wanted Danny to stand before the frozen throne and show them what humans really were. He had refused at first. He was nobody, a welder, a former firefighter. What could he possibly say that would change the minds of alien rulers who had governed for thousands of years? But Lyra had been insistent and stubborn. She had called him directly, her face appearing on his screen with that familiar determination he remembered from the burning tunnels. You changed my mind, she had said. You showed me something I never expected to see. Show them the same thing that, so here he was, walking through a palace of ice toward a throne room where the fate of his entire species might be decided. The doors opened before him. The throne room was vast beyond comprehension. Thousands of Scythians filled the galleries along the walls. They watched Danny enter with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust to outright hostility. He was an alien here, a creature from a world of fire, walking through a kingdom of frost. At the far end of the room sat the frozen throne. It was carved from a single piece of ice, so clear it looked like crystal. Upon it sat the emperor of the Scythian sovereignty, an ancient male with scales that had faded to pale gray. His eyes were sharp, though, intelligent, dangerous. Beside the throne stood Lyra. She wore formal robes of silver and white. A thin crown rested on her head. She looked like a different person from the scared girl Danny had carried through fire. But when her eyes met his, he saw the same fierce spirit underneath. Danny walked the length of the throne room. He stopped at the proper distance and bowed 3 times. The movements felt awkward, but he did them anyway. The emperor spoke. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder rolling across mountains. You are the human who saved my daughter. Danny straightened. Yes, your majesty. Why? The question hung in the air. Every Scythian in the room leaned forward to hear his answer. Danny thought about all the grand speeches he had practiced, all the diplomatic phrases the servants had tried to teach him. He threw them all away. Because she was scared, he said simply. Because she was trapped. Because I was there and I could help. Murmurs rippled through the galleries. The emperor raised a hand and silence fell. Why advisors tell me that humans are dangerous, that your kind evolved on a world of fire and death, that you cannot be trusted. Danny nodded. Earth is a hard world. We have wars. We have violence. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history. He paused. But we have also done amazing things. We have built cities and cured diseases and walked on moons. We have created music and art and stories that make people cry. He looked directly at the Emperor. We are not perfect, but when someone is in trouble, we help. When someone is suffering, we reach out. When someone is trapped in a fire, we run toward them instead of away. Pretty words, the Emperor said. But words are easy. Then look at what I did, Danny replied. I did not know Lyra was a princess. I did not know she was important. I saw a kid in trouble, and I got her out. I carried your counselor on my back because he could not walk. I saved your children because they were crying and afraid. He took a breath. I did not do it for reward. I did not do it for politics. I did it because that is what humans do. We take care of each other. All of us. Even strangers. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at his daughter. Lyra then. Is what this human says true? Lyra stepped forward. Every word, Father. I watched him walk through fire that would have killed any Scytheran. He carried me when I could not walk. He protected me with his own body. He asked nothing in return. The Emperor studied Danny with ancient eyes. In all my years, I have never seen a species like yours. You are contradictions walking, violent and gentle, selfish and generous, terrifying and kind. Danny shrugged. We're just trying to figure things out. Same as everyone else. Something changed in the Emperor's expression. The hardness softened, just slightly. The council will vote, he announced to the room. But I will say this now, so that all may hear. This human saved my daughter. He saved my people. He asked nothing in return. He paused. If this is what humans are, then perhaps we have been wrong to fear them. Perhaps they are exactly what this galaxy needs. Danny felt something release in his chest. Hope, small and fragile, but real. Lyra caught his eye from beside the throne. She did not smile, not exactly, but he saw gratitude there. And something else. Something that looked like the beginning of a friendship that might span light years. He had come here to save his species. Maybe he had done something even more important. Maybe he had opened a door. Snow fell gently through the frozen trees. Danny watched his daughter run ahead, her boots crunching on the ice-covered path. She was 7 years old and absolutely fearless. The cold that would have sent most humans running for warmth did not bother her at all. She had her father's stubbornness. Lyra walked beside Danny, her silver scales blending with the winter landscape. She wore simple clothes today. No crown, no guards. Just a princess pretending to be a normal person for a few hours. She is beautiful, Lyra said, watching the girl spin in circles trying to catch snowflakes. Danny smiled. She gets that from her mother. 3 months had passed since his speech before the frozen throne. The council had voted the next day. Humanity was granted protected status in the sovereignty, not as servants or soldiers, but as allies, equal partners in an alliance that would reshape the galaxy. Danny had turned down every reward they offered him. Titles, land, wealth beyond imagination. He wanted none of it. He just wanted to go home to his daughter. But Lyra had made him a promise on that burning colony. He would bring her to Earth to meet his daughter. In exchange, she would bring them to her world to see the ice forests. She had kept her promise. Dad, look. His daughter came running back, her cheeks red from cold. Her hands cupped something carefully. A small flower made entirely of ice. It grew naturally on this world, blooming in temperatures that would freeze human blood solid. Lyra knelt beside the girl. That is a frost lily. Very rare. They only bloom once every 10 years. The girl's eyes went wide. Really? Can I keep it? Lyra glanced at Danny. He nodded at it is yours, Lyra said, but you must keep it cold or it will melt. The girl held the flower like the most precious treasure in the universe. She looked at Lyra with sudden curiosity. Dad says you're a princess. Is that true? Lyra smiled. It is true. Oh, you live in a castle? I live in a palace made of ice. The girl considered this information seriously. Can you do magic? Lyra held out her hand. Frost gathered in her palm, swirling and dancing until it formed a tiny figure. A little human girl holding a flower. Danny's daughter gasped with delight. You can make snow appear from nothing. My people are born from cold, Lyra explained. Ice is in our blood. We shape it like your people shape metal. The girl turned to her father with excitement blazing in her eyes. Dad, can we stay here forever? Danny laughed. We have to go home eventually, sweetheart. But can we come back? Danny looked at Lyra. She met his gaze with warmth he had not seen from her before. The scared girl from the walkway was gone. The formal princess from the throne room was gone. This was just Lyra, a young woman who had found an unexpected friend in the strangest of circumstances. You are always welcome here, Lyra said to the girl. Both of you, for as long as you wish. The girl cheered and ran off to explore more of the forest. Danny and Lyra followed at a slower pace, walking side by side through a world of eternal winter. I received reports this morning, Lyra said quietly. The alliance is holding. Trade agreements are being drafted. Cultural exchanges are planned for next year. That is good, she nodded. My father speaks of you often. He calls you the human who walked through fire. He says you change how he sees your entire species. Danny shook his head. I did not do anything special. Lyra stopped walking. She turned to face him directly. You truly believe that, do you not? You genuinely do not understand what you did. I saved some people from a fire. That is all, and oh. Lyra's voice was firm. You showed us something we had never seen before. A species that runs toward danger to help strangers. A species that carries the weak instead of leaving them behind. A species that asks nothing in return for kindness. She paused. We have encountered hundreds of species across the galaxy. None of them are like humans. None of them have what you have. And what is that? Lyra thought for a moment before answering. Hope, she said finally. You carry hope like other species carry weapons. You believe that things can be better, that people can be saved, that strangers can become friends. She smiled softly. It is terrifying and beautiful and completely unlike anything we have ever seen. Danny did not know what to say to that. He was just a welder, a father, a man who could not watch people burn. But maybe that was enough. Maybe that was always enough. His daughter came running back, her arms full of frost flowers she had found. Her face was bright with joy. She looked at Danny with pure, uncomplicated love. Dad, this is the best day ever. Danny knelt and hugged her tight. The cold pressed against them both, but he did not care. His daughter was happy. His people were safe. And somewhere across the stars, a door had opened that could never be closed again. Lyra watched them with an expression that held something like longing. The princess who had everything except someone to carry her through fire, Danny noticed. He straightened up and extended his hand to her. Come on, he said. You promised to show us the ice caves. Lyra blinked. Then she took his hand. The three of them walked deeper into the frozen forest together. A human and his daughter and a princess from a world of eternal winter. Strangers who had become something more. Behind them, the snow kept falling in front of them. The universe waited, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, a story was being told. The story of a man who ran through flames for a stranger. A man who did not know she was royal and did not care when he found out. A man who proved that the greatest power in the galaxy was not weapons or technology or ancient wisdom, that it was simply this: the choice to help, the courage to care, the willingness to walk through fire for someone who needed saving. That was what humans were. That was what they would always be.